I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network, a juror on the panel in the criminal case against the Trump Organization, where the Trump Organization was just found guilty on 17 felony counts, is now speaking out about their experience. Shout out to Jose Pagliari for landing this interview. The particular juror is still remaining anonymous, but one of the most important insights from this interview with Jose Pagliari of the Daily Beast and the Juror is that not only was the jury completely disgusted by the Trump Organization, their lawyers, their lies, their tactics, everything about them, but this particular juror said that Donald Trump needs to be indicted, but the juror cautioned that the prosecution and the investigation needs to be done very diligently, very carefully, and shouldn't be rushed to ensure a conviction. And I think hearing now from an actual juror who sat on a panel and convicted the Trump Organization say that, I think it's an important lesson. We've been talking about it here on the MeidasTouch Network, but how important it is to gather all of this evidence, because the Manhattan DA's presentation, according to this juror, diligent, careful, professional. The way the Trump presented their case, unprofessional, lies, foolishness, deceit. And this is specifically what the juror said. The juror said that they would like to see Donald Trump individually indicted, but, quote, you've got to know you're going to win. You can't waste the money. You can't take Trump to court and lose, because then he's not guilty. He's innocent. That's how he'd interpret it. So as this juror explained the process of how the jury deliberated over the criminal charges against Donald Trump, this juror explained, quote, I was very clear, as was every juror, that Donald J. Trump was not a party to this lawsuit. But I couldn't help but remember the 2016 debate with Hillary Clinton when she showed he hadn't paid federal taxes, and he proudly remarked that was because he was, quote, smart. That was his opinion of taxes, and this was his company. Taxpayers are losers in Trump land. Now, what the juror also said is that the jury felt that the Trump witnesses were basically all liars, and particularly this juror signaled out Jeff McConney, the Trump Organization controller and vice president, who was given immunity. But when McConney took the stand, because he still works at the Trump Organization, he tried to kind of duck and dodge the questions that were being asked. And it was obvious to the jury that McConney was covering up, was lying, which is an interesting signal to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, because the immunity grant is given with the understanding that the individual will tell the truth. So I do wonder, now that you hear this perspective, and that it was obvious to anybody watching that trial that McConney was lying. He had to be impeached on multiple occasions. And so, there was one example where McConney acted like Donald Trump wasn't aware of this, and they had to go back to his grand jury testimony. They go, well, wasn't that Donald Trump's signature? Didn't you tell the grand jury that he was aware of it? And then McConney had to say, well, I guess I said that then. There was like a number of examples where McConney was impeached. One of the things they hated as well, they hated the unprofessionalism of Trump's lawyers, and particularly one of Trump's lawyers, Michael Van der Veen, used a mocking voice to refer to Donald Bender, who was the Mazars accountant for the Trump Organization. Donald Bender speaks in a high-pitched voice, and that was mocked by Trump's lawyers to kind of question his manhood. And it was just like completely weird and bizarre. And that really, really, really offended the jury. They said, this is what the juror said in the interview with the Daily Beast. Michael Van der Veen did nothing to help himself by imitating Donald Bender's voice and speech impediment, impugning his manhood because the guy spoke with a high voice. People really, really didn't like that, the juror said. How small-minded can you be and unnecessary was that, the juror said. Then regarding McConney, who I just talked about, the juror said, nobody believed McConney. Everybody on the jury got that he was stonewalling the prosecution and just could not say enough for the defense. His testimony seemed to be incompetent lying. He tried to obfuscate, but ended up just sounding stupid. Sounds a lot like the Trump organization. One of the things that also angered the jury is when the Trump organization act like dodging Medicare taxes of $25,000 is not a lot of money, because to the jury, $25,000 is a lot of money. So when the Trump lawyer said, well, who cares? It's just $25,000. This is what the juror said was discussed in the deliberations. Quote, do you want the potholes fixed sooner? That's where this money comes from. That's what the jury was talking about. And quote, and the total Medicare tax they dodged was maybe $25,000. And we were supposed to consider it a pittance. It might be a pittance for Trump, for you, but it wasn't a pittance for any of us. I want my Medicare funded. So that's what the juror said when the Trump tried to act like $25,000 is not a lot of money. So then when the jury went back for their formal deliberations, everybody right away, when they were polled by the foreperson and asked, do you find, the Trump organization guilty? Everybody put their hands up like immediately right away. And they went to the next count. Everybody put their hands up immediately right away. So then what they just had to ask is, did anybody here find him not guilty on any of these counts? Find the Trump organization not guilty on any of these counts? And no hands went up. And then so they were able to rather quickly convict on the 17 counts in less than 10 hours. So the jury made swift work and found the Trump organization convicted of these felonies. Another area that the jury found to be completely outrageous was that the Trump organization was treating their executives as independent contractors in addition to their executive salary. And what the jury said is, here you had people doing really well and making good money to begin with, yet their desire for more money and to escape tax liability for it was so insatiable that they had to classify themselves separately as independent contractors to try to take money off the books that they did not report. That really offended the jury. In fact, the jury said that this particular juror said that they were disgusted by it. And then there was a line that was used throughout the trial a lot by Trump's lawyers. And the line was, what this case is really about, this is what Trump's lawyers would say, is Weisselberg did it for Weisselberg. I want you all to remember that, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Weisselberg did it for Weisselberg. And this particular juror said, everybody hated Weisselberg, did it for Weisselberg. Like, we all hated that. And this juror said, quote, do they think we're that stupid and that would confuse us? Like, did they really believe we're that dumb that we would just hear a slogan, Weisselberg did it for Weisselberg? And the juror said that really offended us as well. And the jury gave high praise to the prosecutors for their professionalism, just how they conducted themselves in the courtroom. And the jury really got pissed as well that Trump's lawyers would make all of these frivolous objections while the district attorney's office was asking questions of witnesses, while the district attorney was giving their closing argument. I mean, even the Judge Juan Meacham, during the trial, had to call a sidebar because Trump's lawyers kept on objecting and wouldn't let the district attorney speak and give a closing argument, which was just beyond rude, beyond unprofessional. And I guess it's a good practice pointer when we talk about litigation and trials in general, which is, and this was actually one of the things that I found to be unique about the Johnny Depp trial as well, where it seemed like there was just so much objections and the judge was granting all of the objections every time. Objection to form, objection to this, objection to that, objection to this. Why I found that interesting as a practicing lawyer, that all of those objections and the judge was granting it and like allowing that to take place, is because in a normal circumstance, and I'm not saying, there's necessarily a prototype or a normal circumstance, but jurors usually hate that. And because a lawyer's going to get the information in anyway, a judge often is not going to block the questioning unless there's like a real hearsay problem, unless the evidence is really not permissible, but to like have a flow of the case, because we don't want to waste the time of the jury. We're trying to keep this thing on track, and the goal is to get the evidence out there that is legitimate evidence. But as you see here, the jury was clearly frustrated by the constant objections, by the constant interruptions. They thought it was rude and they thought it was unprofessional in this particular case. So there you have it, a juror in the Trump Organization criminal trial, not only believing that the Trump Organization was not just guilty, but using terms like disgusting, offensive, and all of that. Not only did the whole jury feel that way, but this juror says, look, you got to indict Trump now. This is from the mouth of a juror on the case. So we will keep you posted as we learn more. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit the subscribe button. We are on our way to 1 million subscribers thanks to your support. Check out the Daily Beast article by Jose Pagliari, who got the scoop. Make sure you show Jose love, because that was a great article that he wrote. And check us out at Patreon, patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. We're not funded by any outside investors at all. We're purely crowdfunded. So if you want to help grow this independent media platform and have access to exclusive content you could only get on our Patreon, go check it out, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.MeidasTouch.com. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.